What's up, Florida State fans? Kurt Weiler, the Osceola, thrilled to be joined today by Link Jarrett as we're here. Just wrapped up fall baseball over there, Link. Glad we got a little bit of time for you to join us here.
Well, thank you for having me, Kurt. No, enjoying it. And we're into that second phase, short phase of what we do. We call it skill work, where you have smaller groups and we use the information that we gathered throughout team practice and the little scrimmages that we played and try to stack that into some specific needs for each player. And it takes a little time to assess what each player needs. And then we hone in and try to hammer on a few of those things, which really presents them with a roadmap into the off season. And it's the scariest time because you're asking, especially the pitchers, to do their eventual ramp up for the season away from our facility, which is a little scary. But anyway, that's what we're into now. But good fall. Productive, and happy we're in this period right now where we are.
Yeah, I definitely, a lot of this is going to be about kind of looking ahead, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't start. I mean, looking back, I guess that 2024 season, that 2024 team, just how is that? It feels like a team. I mean, I'm not in the coaching world. It feels like a team that will stick with you, that you'll remember for a long time. I guess what will be the lasting memory of that team?
Kurt, they were resilient and seemed to respond. That team responded. I've had a lot of good teams. That team seemed to answer the call to duty better than most. You came off of what was, 2023. Like nobody's fault, really. It's hard when you transition and there's a gap in the summer in this portal era. You're a little shorthanded, roster very young. The recruiting and the building after that to get into putting a team on the field. And at one time, I think coaches would say, hey, it's program building. They're building your program. I think if you ask coaches today, how do you construct a team in this era of transferring that functions for your program that 1 year? So that entire summer was built around that. And then you get into the fall and you say, wow, there's some nice pieces here. And it looks like it could be dynamic. For those guys last year to rattle off 19 wins in a row, I hadn't seen that before. I'm sure it's happened, but that's hard to do, especially in this era of how good some of these teams are that you deal with. To go to Clemson, and quite frankly, we're in a position to win all three of those games, and to get punched in the face 3 times late in those games. The bus ride back from Clemson, we stopped at Buc-ee's. That was a positive. We stopped at this Buc-ee's and ran around and got all kinds of stuff. And I was so mad. The thoughts of the fire pit saved me. Like I saw that fire pit and I was just envisioning what it would be like to sit out in the woods with that fire pit. Anyway, the next game was at Jacksonville against Florida. And again, the response and the delivery, I mean, we played as well as we could play in that setting, and it was coming off the most unthinkable experience you could ever imagine at Clemson. They responded. The Marching Chiefs, 2 of the neatest games that I can recall as a coach or player were because the Marching Chiefs played in the right field bleachers during our game, and it was a very unique, cool experience, man. And our guys responded. But as this was leading in, and then you get out here and you realize what the atmosphere is like, and you have people climbing up the right field fence to try to look at the field, and you have the band playing, part of you is like, we've got to actually go out here and perform, or this is going to be the biggest lay of an egg you've ever seen. If we do all of this and you play like crap, that's not what you want. They responded. They continued to respond. And this is a lot of info for you, man, but when you come out of the gate and you play well, you start to position yourself to have a chance to have postseason events in Hauser Stadium. That was a goal of mine when I came back, was to rejuvenate the experience of postseason baseball here. And I mean, the facts are the facts. If you have those events here, it's easier to win them and it's easier to get to Omaha. So we were able to do that. And that was very competitive play in the ACC, good run in the ACC tournament, although we got drilled in the final. But, you know, I pulled back some of the arms when that game seemed to get away a little bit. I reeled back the bullpen guys. I was not going to overextend them. I thought we had done enough to host. We did. The regional setting, tough regional. When your 4 seed has 40 wins, there's only one of those regionals. That was the one here. Tough. UConn, for them to go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a really good team. They were really good. And Duke, those were 2 Omaha teams. So was UConn. UConn goes out there and knocks both of those teams out. Impressive. So when you see UConn's coming here, you have to look at what they did and the damage they did to get to our super regional. To use Connor Whitaker in that championship, what was the championship game? It necessarily didn't have to be, really. It could have gone to a third game, but it turned out that was the championship game. To use and how they answered. Here comes Whitaker. Let's go. Let's try to finish this thing. Great. The Omaha run, amazing. I know that the first Tennessee game, we were in control. Couple moments in the game, we did not do things that tidied it up. People can talk about the check swing. We have to understand as players and coaches, we need to do better in the moment of the game that we can control. We didn't do some things well on the bases, didn't handle 2 defensive moments, awkward things, but we didn't handle them. And it bites you. The response, again, I'm back to the response. The Virginia and North Carolina wins. The feeling, Kurt, to explain to you in the meeting room before we left the hotel to go play, I think it was Virginia. I don't remember who we played in what order. I just remember the rage I felt in that room. If there's a such thing as silent fury and rage, it was in that room that morning, knowing what you had to go do and how quickly this thing could end if you didn't go perform. Played as good as we could play for 2 games. And then it got away from us the third the third one of those on Tennessee, not counting that, but then Virginia, North Carolina, the third game, Tennessee, in that little string. You look back to, man, if Leiter had been healthy, and what does that do to change the run at the end? And if you had Gavin Adams, who never pitched for us, through 101 miles an hour. So you think about some of those things, and obviously to be in the position we were in at the end, very proud of the guys. But again, wrapping this up for you, their responding capability to what was asked of them. You have to respond to some really good moments too. And I thought about that throughout the course of the year and the excitement in the stadium. They seemed to play their best baseball and continued to respond and deliver. And I'll never forget that. It was a passionate team. They played with energy. At times I stepped back and let them go a little bit. Like, they like to open up and play. And you saw the excitement of how they ran the bases, and when they hit home runs, some of the emotion, it was raw, man. It was pure raw emotion. I think it was fun for the sports followers and fans to watch the way they played, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I guess turning to 2025, obviously last offseason, even coming off not the most successful season, y'all had quite a bit of portal success bringing in, the middle infielders, bringing in Jackson West, Max Williams, Cam Leiter, a few other guys. Jacob Marlowe didn't pitch, but I think, obviously there were reasons for that. This year, coming off of, having, the proof of concept of the season y'all just had, did that make the portal process any different? Did it make it, how did it change things?
Kurt, it's an interesting dynamic in the portal world we're in. Sometimes when the team appears to be on paper really good and really deep, is it as attractive for players that want to come in and ultimately play immediately. Like they want to step in and know that, hey, this position is mine. There's no layers to work through. So sometimes appearing to be really good makes it more difficult. Okay, so that's a new world that we're in. I think things with the portal will calm down with all the new rules that are hopefully coming. Hopefully this stuff changes. It's hard to, the turbulence of this is so drastic, but so you have to be much more precise when you're asking people to join a team that appears to be really good on paper. Now, we lost a lot. So when you go into the portal this year, it probably wasn't the volume of what we were looking for in the summer of 23, but you're trying to fill some specific needs. You get Wes Mendez, a dynamic left-handed pitcher from Ole Miss that friends of Jamie Arnold, and there's some connections to the guys on the team with Wes. So that was a slam dunk. Wes could have gone anywhere he wanted to go, but knowing the culture of the team and how we run this, and that we had a need for some pitching help, that was a great fit, portal fit. Joey Vellini from the University of South Florida actually pitched against us, and as that evolved and he became healthy, he was one of our more consistent performers in the entire fall. Reminded me a little bit of John Michael Bertrand, who you probably remember from Notre Dame, that was a two-time All-American that really pitched with a package of stuff that allowed him to function and get deep in games. So on top of having Jamie back, you bring in those two lefties, huge. Jacob Marlowe, after the poor guy, the two heart procedures he had. I mean, it's hard to even think that you're saying that about a 21-year-old kid. He had it, and we're fortunate that he's back out there. It's a blessing that he's able to go pitch. He had a good fall. So you bring in some of these. I mean, Jacob was here, but we haven't seen him pitch yet in terms of a real game, but it's a good look. You have Holtz back. And you're adding to this. You have Brady Lauk. You have Hudson Rowan, some younger guys that need to elevate their game a little bit to add help. Evan Crest, Peyton Prescott, two right-handed pitchers. We've seen them have really nice moments, and Prescott's been up to 97, 98. Evan Crest, out of the Connor Whitaker mold, sinks it, good slider, good cutter, changeup, good. Then you have Mason Martinez from VCU that was added. Then you have your Johnny Abrahams and your Joe Charles, and you have some of those guys that we've all seen perform back. Chris Kinnear, junior college righty, up to 95. So I'm giving you some of the transfer pieces that are here that add to a pitching staff that needed to be lengthened out. Where lighter lands, I can't tell you. I'm not even going to get into that. There's too much with the throwing ramp up to see where we land with Cam. But impressive staff. Just with the pitching, I think the quality of the depth stands out to me. I mean, there's people that have more arms in their total number of pitchers on a staff, but I really like where we are, the balance. We're not having to make roster moves at this time of year, which can be very difficult on everybody involved, to tell people, hey, sorry, thanks a lot, we don't have a spot, or you're going to have to go somewhere else. That's not in play. So that's a good thing. So I like the pitching staff. In terms of the position players, you add a Gage Harrelson. You add Chase Williams in the outfield. Those are dynamic, runner, rangy, athletic guys. Then you have Max Williams back, who's one of the best returning bats in the country. There's some left-handed power. You add Bladen Plain, who is not maybe a center field profile like the other guys, but a big, physical, left-handed, 6'4", 225-pound guy with unbelievable power. Then you have Duncan and Delamalure that are back in the outfield. So I like that brigade. You move into the infield, you have Cal Fisher, who could have played any of the positions last year. And it was nice for him to have a freshman year. As you would draw up a freshman year, You get some time at third here and there. You get a little time at short. You get a little time at second. You grab some at-bats. You pinch hit. You get involved. But he was not thrust into a heavy role. Now, he will be this year. Any of the positions he could play. Also working at third, Carter McCulley, 6'4", from Pensacola, where Bladen Plain went to junior college. Really good infielder, Kurt. Like, it's fun to watch. He's learned a lot about his offensive game. He's gotten more physical. Alex Lodisa's back. Farrow's back. Noah Sheffield is in play. Jace Estes is in play. So when I look at that infield group, it's versatile, Kurt. I move those guys around in fall practice. You've probably watched. I'm not trying to etch people into positions. The versatility and the movement allows them to learn more about what's going on in the infield and with the game. So I like that group. At first base, Miles Bailey from Lincoln High School, 6'4", 255. I've seen him hit balls off the top of the scoreboard. I've seen him hit balls over the lights in right center field. Now, we have to get to the point where the quality of the at-bat out of Bladen Plain, out of Miles Bailey, out of Max Williams, those three left-handed power bats, they have to deliver the quality of the at-bat and pitch selection and decision-making and takes and swings. For the power and the talent to play, we have to try to pull that out better than I saw this fall. This sounds great, what I'm telling you, and the versatility and the talent. The execution and the capability to manage the details of the at-bats and some of the base running things with the guys that can really run, that's going to determine if this is a championship team or a good team. Those things add up and they matter. And when you see the growth of Jaime Ferrer, you saw the growth of Cam Smith, you saw what Tibbs turned into, you saw what Marco turned into, you saw Lodis and Cantu and some of those guys grow. How quickly can that group grasp the things the way Tibbs and Ferrer and Cam did? I don't know yet. Behind the plate, Jackson West, Nate Semelia, transfer from Dartmouth. Hunter Carnes is the best freshman hitter I've seen. He's the best freshman hitter I've seen. He's further along catching than I thought. I don't really talk about the DH spot. It's there, but I'm not really training people to be DHs. At some point when I make out a lineup, there will be a DH in there. I'm not there yet. But out of that whole bunch, somebody will slide into that role. And, I feel like the defensive capabilities of the team is really good. And then somebody's going to DH. So that's what I see going into it. And I talked for a long time, but that's how I see it. And it's pretty clear. Now, how can the stuff on the mound, how can Micah how can he sequence pitches for Wes? Wes, when Mendez is in the zone, it's a little different than Vellini. Vellini and Crest are going to have to pitch. Mendez attacking the middle of the zone with 94, 95, curveball, slider, change, going to be fine. So trying to figure out how to get the most out of each individual when you really throw it out there to start playing competitive games. We're not there yet. We need the next couple months to get there, but I like the roadmap I see to putting a competitive product on the field.
You talked about the pitching staff depth. I think you saw last year, obviously, you kind of unfortunately, I think you often have to account for at least a handful of pitcher injuries over the course of the season, just with how those seem to just ramp up in today's baseball. It's kind of what it is. I mean, I think you saw last year, losing two starters during the season, losing a few other guys I think you were counting on before the season or right as the season was beginning. I guess, how much better do you feel about, just like you talked about, the pure numbers you have from that standpoint of options going into this season?
I really like it. I think it is better than last year. I do think it is a little deeper. And you knock on wood, because it seems like you're going to have 3, 4, 5 guys that are out. Some of the guys go down on the staff, and you could ask the Braves and the Rays and the Yankees and the Dodgers. Everybody goes through it. We can't go grab a guy out of AAA or AA and say, hey, we're going to let Johnny start because Clayton Kershaw is down. Like, we don't have that luxury. Somebody's going to go out there and replace it. It's just in the college world, you're hanging on and trying to train and protect and guide and build up so that you limit the chances and frequency that the guys have a problem. Getting into roles, when you look at the staff, the capabilities of the starters shortens what the leverage guys do. Every guy, this is the way I look at it, every guy that's not starting is a leverage reliever. How many times when you look at the importance of our games, there were some games that surely got out of hand. We were on the good side of some, and I'm sure we're on the bad side of a few of those too. But when you really add it up, how many innings do you feel like are not critical leverage type innings in college baseball games when your resume matters? Our resume mattered all the way to the ACC championship game. I thought we had clearly done enough getting into that game. When you win 3 to get to the championship game, my goodness, like you win 3 out of the 4 games against ranked teams, like that sure helps. There was still question, believe it or not. So how many innings are not leverage innings? Not many. So messaging this to the guys so they understand if you're not a starter, there is so much value in every out of our season. So that's part of the ramp up and the build up is the mentality that when I get the call, it really matters. Even though it's in the 5th inning of a game when we're up 5-2, there's tremendous need and value for performance there too. So as we start to ramp up, we'll ramp up 6 or 7 guys. And then you're trying to prepare other guys for leverage moments. So when you see a scrimmage, a lot of times they'll enter the game with base runners to try to magnify the importance of getting the guy at the plate out to limit the damage and contain the situation you were brought into. Very few pitchers, the young guys, high school kids coming in, and even your junior college guys, very few have been relief pitchers. So that's a point of emphasis for us as we get into the buildup is you have your starting group that's building up a little bit, but then how do the other guys transition into those leverage moments? Key stuff.
Jamie Arnold, I know we talked to Micah after the Garnet and Gold game. He talked about, I forget exactly how many innings he threw. I know he was kind of very limited this fall just because he's a known commodity and, you're going to need him for a lot of innings in the spring and summer. I guess, what did you see? How did you see him make the most of the time he got this fall? And I guess, what have you seen from him generally this offseason building off such a strong 2024 season?
Well, he weighed 168, 170 when he got to campus. And I have Jamie Burleson, our strength coach. Like, we track all this. He weighs them in weekly, but I mean, he's 200 pounds. Now, he doesn't look like, oh, wow, look at that. He's put on 25, 30 pounds. Most people, if you or I put on 30 pounds, people are like, my goodness, what's going on? He carries it so well. Like the body was ready to add that physicality. So you've seen that velocity continue to go. He knew he needed to fine-tune this changeup. The changeup is really special. So when you have that climbing left-handed fastball, and now you can add a pitch that works kind of down and comes out of the hand looking like that fastball, and that thing fades and sinks a little bit, that's opened up a whole new door. The slider, he tightened that up a little bit, shortened it up so it's seemed a little easier for him to command it. He's got 3 pitches in play, and he knew, Kurt, when he got here, that was something he needed to work on, was just the feel and the mastery of that changeup. So, that's a big deal for him and us. But if you have a lineup of right-handed hitters, he ran into it every once in a while. Sometimes physical, more advanced guys, that the fastball slider combination, it was enough, but it probably still could have been better at times to just neutralize some of the right-handed bats. And I think that changeup will do it.
I guess looking at the other side of the ball, looking at the offense, I mean, power was so much part of the offensive identity a season ago. I guess through fall, I know it's kind of an incomplete picture, but what is your idea? What do you think the offensive identity of this team can be? Can it be somewhat the same in power, or is there going to have to be other ways maybe to generate that?
I see more power potential. I don't see the quality of the at-bat right now. So if you were to have a showcase and we were to go out and, take 3 rounds of 4 and we were just hitting, you might evaluate it from a scouting standpoint of having more power. For that power to play, the quality of the at-bat has to be better, and it's not there right now. It's not there right now. So that's a concern. But it's fun to have that kind of threatening look in the lineup. It's fun. But, my talk to them today when we have our hitters meeting is, guys, the swing decision, we're working on it right now in skill work, but the emphasis of growing through the at-bat, the quality of the at-bat against quality pitching, and having a plan of attack and staying with your plan. It's there, Kurt. We have to try to bring it out. And that's a hard thing. Pitch recognition, decoding pitches. When that thing's coming from the hand to the plate, you have 4 to 5 tenths of a second to make that. That's how long the pitch itself lasts. So making a decision, you're talking hundredth of a second and what your eyes are telling you and where that's going. You can have all the power in the world, but that decision in that amount of time is not easy, and it's not easy to train it. So the power's there. If the quality of the at-bat can rise a little bit, we may not be that far off of what you saw last year. Probably hard to match. I mean, I may be getting ahead of myself thinking that that's possible, but the physicality there. I'll say the same thing with the base running. When you watch Chase Williams and Gage Harrelson and Duncan and Faroe, these guys, Jackson West, Lodis, like each of them have the ability to change the game on the bases. But again, it's like power, quality at bat, speed, base running savvy. Those are two. We could have a race and we might be really fast if you just want to run the 60 or the 40. But how do you translate that to base running decisions and steal jumps and when to run and when not to run and the sliding, just all of those details of just stealing one base, it adds up. So can the group that's capable of running, and that's part of the coaching aspect, is can we get that to play in the game? In the outfield, like the defense, the guys that can run and play the outfield like that, that's there. Now, if we can't catch the ball after we've run for it, then we don't belong on the field anyway. I don't think that's the issue. So the defensive part involving the speed and the range, I think this team could be a little bit better. So maybe that diminishes what's required in terms of runs per game or pure offensive output. I think the pitching could be better. I think the defense could be better to try to live up to last year's offensive firepower. It may be tough, but can you offset that a little bit with other parts of the game and allow your offense to still be functional and cover it in some other spaces?
You've talked a lot about the new faces, and a lot of them seems like are going to be taking on prominent roles or in contention to take on prominent roles. You have a lot of, I feel like, second year guys too, both on the mound and in the lineup potentially. About just like, I mean, you've talked about Cal and a few other guys who from that group, be they on the mound, be they on in the field, have you seen really rise to the challenge of, I mean, the opportunity in front of them with so many spots up for grabs?
Well, I mean, I look at Max and Jackson West as they're second-year guys for me. And they were at Alabama, but really they didn't play. So they were there. But this is really their second go-around of participating with regularity. Those two guys have a chance to really, really help us, and they've seen it, and they've been in it. Like, they've been through it. They've been in the fire. They've had to deal with the ups and downs. Pretty impressive. Cal's chomping at the bit to play. Cal's could have played last year. And I think if you look at most teams, he probably finds his way in there somewhere. But when you've found yourself in a situation where you had Smith and you had Lodis, who the defense, Alex played just great shortstop defense, and Faroe had some really dynamic moments and really handled second base well. It was just sporadic for Cal. But like I told you earlier, if your freshman year looks like that, that's probably the best way to truly grow into it. So you get a taste, but I think at times, if you want to just take Cam Smith as a freshman, there were times he might have needed a little breather, even if it was 4 or 5 innings of a game, just to watch it and regroup. He didn't get it. We had to go with it. Now it helped him. Believe me, it helped him. But I think at times what Cal went through may be a more comforting learning curve to step in and off we go. Hudson Rowan, Lauk, Abraham, all 3 of those guys. Like, where do they go? It needs to be more consistent. And even some of the older guys like Joe Charles, it's got to be more consistent. We saw outings that were really, really good. And then 3 days later, it wasn't even close to the same thing. So can Abraham, can Rowan, can Lauk, can Joe Charles, Holtz kind of stepped into his own a little bit. Like, I think there was more consistency with him down the stretch, but just repeating your A game, repeat. That's what those second-year guys have to try to do on the mound.
Last question for you here, I guess a little bit in the bigger picture. You talked about the uncertainty about the state of things right now, but I know even last night on the virtual town hall, Michael Alford talked about, you're trending towards a lot of being able to make the partial scholarship people into full scholarship people. And obviously baseball very much affected by that, with what the scholarship limit being 10.8. And it seems like that might be changing, I guess. What do you think if that comes to pass and you're able to start doing that, what can that do for college baseball? And what can it do at a place like Florida State, where I would have to imagine there'd be willingness to do that?
Well, it really helps. And it helps the industry as a whole. For years, there's our roster right now is 40. So you're dividing up. We have 11.7 scholarships, and we divide that up amongst the guys. And then the NIL stuff, that's a whole different bucket, and it's a crazy world. And Kurt, we've got to contain this. The turbulence and the difficulty coaching and managing this era we're in, it's as tough as it could possibly be. Tony Bennett, I followed him at Virginia, like, gifted, talented young coach. To listen to his press conference, did you listen to that?
Some of it, yeah.
Man, I feel you, Tony. Like, we all get it. It got to a point for him, like, you feel the difficulty and the challenge of how you got into this game and what you were trying to do. I'm going to better the lives of the young men. I'm going to help them be the best players and the best people they can be. Great. That's what you got into this for. You're still doing it. It's just to get to the point where you have guys in the locker room that are what you want, and the transferring and guys leaving, and here come guys. It's just different. So we're deserving of more scholarshiping in baseball. We are. Our competition is going to have it too. Now, it levels the playing field for the baseball player in general. Like, hey, we've leveled up a little bit. There's been decades that baseball probably was on the back burner of equity with scholarshiping for whatever reason. I think this is going to help. Now, in-house, our geographic competition, we play in the ACC. We recruit against the SEC more than we do North Carolina and NC State and Virginia, just because of where the players are. And you want to see your kid play. It's, you're not going to Pennsylvania to get a lot. Sometimes those kids don't come this far. So I think we're still on a level playing field with our geographical competition in recruiting, because I think the sport overall is going to land with who we compete against in a similar spot with the scholarships. It's better for the college baseball player. It is to say, hey, I'm not getting books and tuition anymore. I'm actually getting books, tuition, my housing, and some of my meals. Who wouldn't like that? But everyone's getting it. The difference, Kurt, the draft and the impact it has when we get to mid-July you've done all this signing stuff and all of the visits and all of the recruiting and meeting the families, and this has gone on for years. You get to the middle of July, and this whole thing takes on a new look because 7 of them are drafted. So which 7 are you going to lose? That's hard. And sometimes the scholarship amount doesn't offset what happens when those major league dreams are handed to you. And it feels like that's something they want to entertain. Do I think it's the right route for all of the high school players? 100% no. That's tough to just jump into that at age 18. I think we're the right avenue to make your transition easier into being a pro. But does the scholarshiping help offset the desire to jump in to your pro career out of high school? Maybe it does. The NIL and the outside deals and any of the rev share, I don't know where that is yet. So how does that help? I don't know. The NIL piece maybe helped a little bit make some of those decisions on the guys that are drafted that actually are in our locker room, that don't have to be in our locker room. And there's a few. So that's a piece that no other sport has, Kurt. The softball, the soccer, football, lacrosse, they don't have high school kids, basketball, that are leaving to go sign pro on July 25th, right before the fall semester. So where does it land? I don't know. Is baseball going to be in a better space because the scholarshiping is a little more equitable? Yes, it's going to be in a better space.
Link, I appreciate it greatly, very generous with your time, and I know how busy you always are, so I appreciate you taking so much time with us.
Enjoyed it, Kurt. Thank you for having me.